Thanks, guys. Great to be up here with everybody. So we've seen over the last few years the incredible rise and growth in women's sports across both viewership, investment, and ultimately valuation. So a couple questions to start it off. Julie, maybe starting with you, and congrats on all your success with Angel City. Can you talk about what have been some of the key factors that have helped make it such a success?
Absolutely. And first, I just want to thank Scott and Dick for having me. They always give us a great platform to talk about Angel City, which is actually really important. And I think speaks a little bit to your question is what has helped make Angel City success. I mean, there are so many factors. And I think one that needs to be talked about and needs to continue is the amount of support and attention we get from traditional media. When we started building Angel City back in 2019, 3% of all media coverage was for women's sports. And then there was also a narrative that nobody watches women's sports, nobody will invest in women's sports, nobody cares about women's sports. Well, if you make it that hard to find, that hard to engage with, that hard to create a connection, you're basically creating the cycle that you're discussing. And so today at 15% of media coverage, it's better. And you can see the effects with Caitlin Clark and the NCAA and the WNBA and even the NWSL and the latest media deal. But we need help. And it's not a handout and it's not a charity. It's really about recognizing the value and the excitement that over 50% of the population is women, and that when you actually get an opportunity to watch women's sports and you see how fantastic the product is and how incredible the athletes are, you want to watch it more. And for Angel City, we knew that day one. We knew that there was an incredible amount of excitement and interest and engagement and connection with women's football. And we saw it in the Olympics and we saw it in the World Cup. They won the World Cup twice back-to-back in 2015 and 2019. And you had athletes like Alex Morgan and Kristen Press and Tobin Heath that were household names. And they came back into this league, the National Women's Soccer League, which nobody had heard about. Nobody even knew you could watch these incredible athletes play in their backyard. So knowing that you had the best athletes in the world playing a global sport, the best sport in the world, in the best sports city in the world, when we went to build Angel City, it was not what have other women's teams done before, not what have other women's football clubs done before, but it was what do these women deserve? What is professional? And so we set the bar. It's kind of funny to say this, like to say we set the bar high. For women's sports, it was high. For sports, it was just the bar, right? If you go to men's professional teams, they have a practice facility, they have a stadium, they have a staff of 100+ people, they're investing tens of millions of dollars, and no one's ever asking the question, well, are you making money or when you're making money, right? It's about the experience, it's about the product. And so we approached Angel City the same way, which was we were going to invest in the community, invest in the players, invest in the product and the pitch, and invest in our brand to drive attention and awareness that ultimately drive revenue, and in our unique model, impact. And I think that's sort of the last secret to our success to date. And we're not done, and we have a long way to go. But it's saying that we can use sport as a vehicle to bend the curve towards equity. We can use sport in the sense of community and belonging to do something bigger and to create a community that comes together more for just winning and losing. Winning helps and accelerates and makes everything better, but you want your community and fans to be there when you're not winning. And so for us, it was about building an organization where mission and capital could coexist, where we could have a positive impact in the community as we drive to prove that women's sports is investable and can grow at the same level and pace, if not more, which is literally what we're seeing today, than men's sports.
Stan, maybe for you, if you could talk a little bit about the Professional Women's Hockey League, what initially excited you about it, and what have been some of the surprises, including to the upside?
Well, first of all, everything has been to the upside. All of it has been an incredible thrill ride since this began. We've been going 100 miles an hour. About 18 months ago, Marc came to me because he and our other partner, Billie Jean King, had gotten this opportunity to take all of the Olympians, all of the Olympic women's hockey players from Canada and the US who had refused to play in the iterations of leagues before because of their lack of equipment, lack of standards, lack of coaching, et cetera, because they wanted to be treated like professionals. And Marc came to me because it was going too slowly, and he said, can you do this? So I said, sure. And we spent about 6 months negotiating collective bargaining agreement, and then on July 1, we had everything done, including buying out the old league, but that gave us 6 months to create something. But the key is, and I don't think this gets enough attention, we are a single entity ownership. Marc owns the league, he owns the 6 teams, and there's just Billie Jean, Alana Kloss, me, and Royce Cohen, my colleague at the Dodgers. That's our leadership, that's our ownership. And so we don't have owners with egos and different budgets and different priorities calling a commissioner. We don't have one of those either. As I like telling my friends who are commissioners, I think it's an outdated concept, but we'll talk about that later. But, so the most important thing we had was 98 of the world's elite women, of the best women's hockey players in the world, who were so extraordinarily appreciative for what we are doing that they just dedicated themselves to helping this work, to making this happen. We had our first game on January 1. For the year, we were projecting 1,000 people a game. Just looking at the history of women's hockey. The year just ended Sunday. We wound up averaging more than 6,000 a game, including selling out buildings in Toronto, the NHL building in Toronto, the NHL building in Montreal, where I'm headed tomorrow, because tonight is the opening of our playoffs. So it's all been to the good in a way we could not have predicted, a success beyond our wildest dreams. Will we expand? Well, yeah, sure. Not right away. We still have bugs to iron out. My first meeting with these players, I said this. I said, listen, one thing I can promise you, in year 1, I am going to make mistakes, okay? I'm telling you now, but we're in this together. We'll fix them by year 2. And so next year is a year of fixing things, and they're all in. Whenever we need something, our players, who are a big part, the biggest part of making this successful, have a real stake in this success, and so it's been a joy. However, I mean, I have done other things, and if this is the top line on my obituary, I'm going to be pissed, okay?
Keep that.
But it's on that track. That's how successful it's been.
That's really great to hear. So I've heard a lot about great investment. Maybe Marc, over to you. How do you think about, and maybe talk a little about the fund, but how do you think about how women's sports fits into an overall sports portfolio? And then what are some of the key themes or traits that you're looking for when thinking about investments in women's sports?
Hey, they give you a mic. I was like, my voice is gone. Look, it's a little bit what everybody said, what Julie spoke about, what Stan spoke about. Like, why do people want to be in women's sports, right? I actually think you've got this cultural revolution that's happening. And part of the reason, we're just huge believers that there's going to be this massive opportunity. And the reason for that is just because things are different today. So who here has a daughter? Raise your hand. Oh, I like that. Okay. All right. My sister is sitting right there. And, when my dad and I went, if we went to a game and we did anything, how many games did you go with us, with our father? None. So
That's 0.
Right, it's 0. So if you sort of think about it, for all of you out there, you're going to bring your daughters to games. You're going to coach your daughters. The thought of not bringing your daughter somewhere isn't even a thought process anymore. So because of that, and as Julie said, you've got 50% of the population is women. They haven't been involved. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see that you've got all these different avenues and all these different ways where women are doing professional soccer. It's professional volleyball, it's professional basketball, now it's professional hockey. And these are not things that you thought were going to happen 10 years ago. But now it's there. And the fact that you've got it on TV, people want to see it, and they want to be a part of it. And now you're seeing that, stadiums are getting sold out. You said earlier when we were together in your model, you were hoping you were going to have 1,000 people, right? And you're selling out. So I think that's what everybody's finding. And I think for us, we want to be at the beginning because that's where you are in women's sports today. You really are at the beginning. And you're going to see the valuation of these franchises, whether it's women's soccer, women's volleyball, women's hockey. It'd be nice if Marc would let me be one of those owners. So
We can talk after the...
talk,
okay.
right? Yeah. Helped a little
We
people.
could facilitate that.
So you'll facilitate. So there we go. We got a banker. It's all done. Right? The only question is really going to be price. But that's the opportunity, right? And that's why we're involved. And I know we're going to talk about Caitlin Clark, but you've sort of seen that phenomenon. And that phenomenon, when you sort of talk about it, nobody would have thought that you would end up having a women's basketball game, even though it was the finals of the women's basketball, that ended up having more viewers than any men's basketball game, right? What that's telling you is there's a shift or there's an acceptance. But whatever it is, it's happening. And if it's happening, you want to be a part of it.
Well, I think that's a good segue. You know, a lot has been made about the spike in ratings and attendance and the Caitlin Clark effect. Maybe, Julie, starting with you, how do you think about this as a trend and may have a different view as to just how recent that trend really is, given what you've seen over the last couple of years? But maybe just give your perspectives on what it is that everybody's seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're Americans and we like greatness, right? We brought Messi to the United States because he's the best of all time. And, the attendance of every game that Messi plays is sold out. MLS season pass saw a spike when Messi came into the market because you want to see greatness. With women's sports, other than once every 4 times a year, whether it's the Olympics or the World Cup, we haven't had the opportunity to see greatness and to discover greatness. And I think was incredible about Caitlin Clark is that her popularity and her growth, again, wasn't necessarily because of media. It's because I watched her and I said, you have to turn this on. Marc watched her, Stan watched her. The community said, we have to watch this. And the best way to judge that is in the ratings. And the fact it was millions of viewers more. The WNBA draft saw, 4 million viewers, something insane to watch people walk up on a stage. I mean, it was pretty incredible. But I think there's 2 things that are really interesting that are happening. One is, in talking about Caitlin Clark, a lot of people are upset about her compensation, right? The entry-level compensation for women in the WNBA is $75,000. You have just seen greatness. Everyone thinks that Caitlin Clark is a one-of-a-kind athlete. She is the Messi, right? She is the future GOAT. She is a generational player. And I have my male colleagues saying, this is ridiculous. How is she only getting paid $75,000? I don't think men have ever talked about what women are getting paid when it comes to sports. And that starts to change the conversation. And it's changing the way even the WNBA is commercializing moving forward. When you have a generational athlete, when you have all this attention so that it's not a spike, so that it's not a moment, so that it moves into a movement, you have to lean into that. It's give the audience what they want, and then it's really the responsibility of these teams and these owners to build an experience that is so undeniable that once Caitlin Clark comes and leaves, I'm still coming back for that team because the excellence on the court or on the pitch or on the field is still so exceptional. And so I'm loving seeing what the WNBA is doing, is taking advantage of this incredible player and starting to build the product around it, and then everyone is starting to pay attention because they know how good the game was. And the other thing, and I obviously can talk about this for a while, but the ratings didn't fall off from Caitlin's game to the South Carolina game to the LSU game. People kept watching because then they were like, this is great basketball. This is a great product. So they kept coming back, and it wasn't just for Caitlin. She just opened their eyes to this is an incredible league, and this is incredible talent. And they're all now slowly moving into the WNBA, which, as you can see with the commissioner and what they're doing, they're starting to lean into that. And so I think what we call a spike today is just going to be, a Sunday, and it's going to continue.
If you think about what Julie just said, greatness. So who here watches the Olympics? Raise your hand. Right. Has anybody ever watched in the Olympics curling? Right. Other than the Olympics, have you watched curling? Right. So why do you watch it? You actually watch it because you're watching the best in the world compete. That's why we watch it. And that's what people care about. It really is. You want to see the best in the world compete. And now that you have an opportunity to do that with Caitlin, and people are seeing the WNBA, they're going, oh, I love that. Or they started seeing college basketball. I love that. And that's what's changing. And the fact that, Julie's right. The ratings started around, when you were in the quarters, it was around 10, 12 million. The semifinals was 14 million, then the finals ended up being 18 and a half. So why did it keep going up? Because everybody said, oh, you've got to watch this, right? It becomes word of mouth. And everybody started getting excited. The reason for that is because fundamentally, all people want to do is watch the best in the world compete. And now they're seeing the best women in the world compete. And if you were a media company, I think media companies prior to this thought, oh, the only thing our audience wants to see is men compete. 95% of all sports on TV is dominated by men. That number is going down. If it goes to 80%, what does that mean for women's sports? That's up 400%. So that's what's happening. That's why sort of Stan is starting a new league. That's why everybody is getting involved in it, because we're seeing the same thing, but we're seeing it at the ground level. And the ratings are showing you that the rest of America is doing this as well.
Yeah, Stan, as you think about having some of the best athletes in the world, how have you thought about kind of media strategy and really getting your league out to the masses?
Well, we, as a startup, we had a lot of investments we had to make the league grow. And one of the two most important decisions we made were, number one, we're going to have a full staff, a full league staff, 120 people from day one. That's not the typical way. And yes, it's expensive to start that way, but we wanted everyone to know this is a professional league in every way. The second decision we made was to pay for professional major league broadcasts of every one of our games. Multiple cameras, videotape replay, all of it. And so with that, in Canada, all three sports networks share our full schedule of games. In the U.S., the RSNs in our cities, Boston, New York, and Minnesota, the RSNs all cover our games. And anywhere you are in the world, it's on YouTube. So when I was in Korea with Shohei a month ago, I was watching our games on my phone, because you can access that anywhere for free. Every single one of our games, every one of which was major league quality produced. Yes, it cost us money, but it's like Julie said, it was showing this to everyone, and everyone has kind of hopped on the bandwagon. So
was that a hard decision to make as you were thinking about the kind of cost benefit of making that type of investment? I'm not sure a lot of other leagues might
it
do
was
that.
an expensive decision, but it wasn't a hard decision, because again, I don't call these things losses, I call them investments, because that's what they are. And the fans we have built, who are now, selling out our buildings for the playoffs, because, they've been following now for the whole season. It was absolutely the right call, the best investment we could have made. Yes, it was expensive, but on an ROI basis, it was cheap.
If you think about what Stan just said, and it's actually really true, people in the past were trying to do these things on the cheap, right? And so the product that came out just didn't look that good. Right, because you're not playing. I mean, you know this. You're not playing on a great field. You don't have the facilities. You don't have what you end up having on the men's side. So, if you end up deciding that you want excellence, people actually appreciate that, right? And Stan's right. It's an investment, and you're going to recoup that investment, whether that's a year from now or 5 years from now. But the way you're going to recoup it is the amount of people who are coming, right? You've got to create something that people want to see and people want to be a part of. And Stan has that. That's the reason, hopefully after this, we'll announce I'm the second owner. But that's what you have, right? And it's really hard to create.
So maybe, Julie, question for you. We talked a lot about audience and about demographics who's there. How did you think about the audience that you were going after when you were going through Angel City, and how has that helped your growth?
Yeah, we actually thought about it very differently than you typically do when you launch a startup, right? You start with a very niche, narrow audience, and you grow from there because you want to control your base. For women's soccer, we believed that it was a very diverse space. We also knew that we were building within Los Angeles that has many ethnicities, has a significant amount of diversity, and we wanted to create a club and a team that was reflective of them to be able to pack the stands. In fact, my first conversation with Mia Hamm, when we were trying to convince her to be an investor, she said, look, we had a team here 10 years ago, it didn't work, and if you're relying on young girls and their parents and families to come to games on weekends, you're going to fail. And I said, well, why is that? And she goes, because they're all playing soccer on the weekends. Like, your most obvious audience is actually not available. And I said, well, good thing for us, because that's not how we think about it. We've approached Angel City from the beginning with this idea that we want to create an experience for everyone. And we've been really thoughtful about how do we define everyone. Family, kids, LGBTQ plus community. Women that are the product of Title IX, that have never felt like they had a place in sports to call their own. Millennials, Natalie would talk about how do we get Angel City to be the Sex and the City pre-party? Or they come to Angel City for 90 minutes, see a match, and then they go downtown and hang out. And so when we were thinking about how do we build an experience for everyone, how do we build a FOMO experience, because we recognize that Los Angeles has so many things to offer. There are 9 professional sports teams, 11 if you add USC and UCLA, there's the beach theme mountains. So how do you get them to come to an Angel City match? And I said, well, we have to recreate the Showtime era of the 1980s Lakers, where you were coming to a game either to see Magic Johnson, greatness, or to see who Jack Nicholson brought courtside. We are fortunate that we have 100 incredible owners, a number of them athletes and celebrities, that play a meaningful role in the development and growth of our business, but are also coming to games. And so for us, we wanted to figure out all the different ways that we could get you there, because we knew if we were able to get you to a game, the experience, the product on the pitch, these incredible athletes would bring you back. So part one was, how do we create an experience for everyone? And we think about that from the moment they wake up. What is the Fan Fest experience? What's the game experience? What's the after game experience? The second part was very clearly saying, once we got you to a game, it was this idea that every game is somebody's first game. So if you think about it from that perspective, every game you're elevating the experience. Every game you're offering something new. Every game you're having a post-morning and you're tweaking it and you're making it better. But effectively you're saying, how do I make it so that this is your best experience ever, and you're going to go bring someone else to come and say, you know what, there's a Johnny Walker bar, and there's a family spirit station, and we've got this sick DJ, and this time we have, a dance troupe, or we have a drag show, because it's Pride. And so we think about our audience, we think about experiences for each of them, and what we've heard and what we see is that we have the most diverse, inclusive, fun, safe, community in all of sports coming, and that's 20,000 plus fans every single game to our 22,000 seat stadium. We've sold out 4 games in our first year. We made it better. We sold out 5 games our second year, and now we're in our third game. We've had 2 sellouts in 3 games and generated the most revenue we've ever generated our first game of our third year. So we're getting better, but that's because I think we're connecting with the community and the broad community that Los Angeles presents.
Stan, so for you, having spent a lot of time around other sports teams, what were some of the lessons or some of the things that you were able to leverage from past experience when you were launching this league?
Well, it was first and foremost the level of everything that constituted being a professional. That was the one word. I spent all last winter doing a collective bargaining agreement, many sessions, talking to many players. Yeah. But that was what kept coming across. We've never been treated like professionals. And so in everything we did, they said, well, we need to have meals after practice. I go, yeah, duh. Like, I'm ahead of you on that. We need actual trainers. Well, obviously you do. And facilities to train. And venues, professional venues. So it was the dedication, the commitment to deliver a professional experience to them, which made them sign on. to delivering their professional efforts, not just on the ice, but in the community. And that was really important to us, as everyone here knows. Our ability to reach out to our community, to get people to connect with us when they're not in the stadium or when they're not at home on their couch, but in every other part of their lives, to connect with us. That's a major part of growing our audience. Our players are committed to that because we have committed to them, to treat them like all elite professional athletes anywhere have always deserved. They just never had it. We found this opportunity, and we filled that niche.
So where do you see the league in 5 years?
I see it having a lot more than 6 teams. I can't tell you where yet. My very first day after our announcement, I had NHL owners call me, even ahead of Marc, to buy teams. We're not there yet, Marc. We'll let you know.
Everybody says that. I'll call you.
But
I'm here. You don't even have to call.
Sounds like
I'm
he
here.
means it, though.
Sounds like
he means
sounds like
it.
people have done that to him a lot.
I'll call you. I'll call.
So we will be, I think our natural destiny is to have a footprint across North America. Ultimately, I expect us to have a relationship with the hockey that is around the world, particularly in Western and Eastern Europe, whether it's friendlies of us going there or them coming here. We are already recognized in one short year, less than 1 year, as the premier women's hockey league in the world. And so all the stars who are currently playing in their country's leagues in Europe are lining up, and today is the deadline to apply for our draft, which is coming up in a month. And so we're having an influx of the best players, the top Olympians from every country that plays Olympic hockey. With that infusion of talent, we have a lot of room to accommodate more cities. We're already working on that. We're going to be playing in bigger and bigger venues. Our 2 most popular franchises, we started out at Mattamy Arena in Toronto, which is the old Maple Leaf Gardens, which has been scaled down. It's only 2,500 seats. And we play in Verdun Auditorium in Montreal. It's only 3,000. Both of them sold out the season the day after we put the tickets on. And so now for the playoffs, we're in much bigger buildings. And as I said, in both of those cities and others, we are now playing in and filling up NHL arenas. So I expect to see a lot more of that. And I don't think it'll take 5 years.
So I know we started talking about the rise of things including valuations. Maybe, Marc, question for you. How do you think about where women's sports are valued today, and then where do you see that going over the next 3, 5+ years?
I think it's going up, but there's a reason for it. I think it's just simple math, right? So today, how much is a ticket? And how much are you getting on sponsorship, and what's your media? That's sort of the 3 things, right, that drive revenue. So if you're selling out, it's easy to raise pricing, right? So we could sell out. I remember when we bought the Bucks, you found out, we're selling out the games. I was like, oh, that's fabulous. And I went through and I found out the reason we were selling out is the tickets in the upper bowl were $1, right? So you're like, right, that's not that hard. So what happens if you raise pricing $5? People won't come. So ultimately, you've got the same problem everywhere. People will show up if you're winning. People will show up if they're interested. So in any women's sports, I think valuations will go up. Why? Because ticket pricing is going to go up. I think sponsorship is going up. And then you'll have your media rights. And as the media rights start going up, you're going to get there. And the thing that's amazing with women's sports is just the low base of where they are. I think 5 years ago, if you wanted to buy a women's soccer franchise, it was what, $2 million? A team just sold for $112 million in San Diego. So in 5 years, you only made 50 times your money. I know for most of you that's not a lot, but for people up here, that's a lot. All right, so now where's it going to be, right? Is it going to go up 50 times? I don't know I don't think so, but I do think it'll go up 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, right? You know, Stan's kidding around a little bit, but they started this league. They could sell teams today. Why are they not? I'll tell you why they're not. Because they think they're going to get a higher price, right? As they build it, as they grow it, as there's more, as you can show that you've got the competition. And that's what we're all seeing, right? And you're seeing that throughout the WNBA. Like when Julie said you had 4 million people watching the draft, what does that mean? That means their ratings are going through the roof. And they've gone up 30, 40% from the last year. All right, well that means on my next media deal, I'm going to be able to charge more, right? It's all about the ratings. It's how many people are watching. The more people who watch, the higher you can charge, right? The more people want to come to a game, the more you can charge. We ended up, you know, when we were selling our tickets for the Bucks, courtside was $250. 10 years later, it was $2,500. Why? Because you had more people who wanted those seats. Right? And it's the same thing. You know, Stan was nice enough to invite me to Dodger Stadium. He was nice enough to say you could sit wherever you want. I'd like to pitch. But we'll talk, right? I'll call. You'll call?
Yeah, I'll definitely call
There you go.
Marc.
See, this is what I mean. You'll call.